All right, so we kind of broke this down into two different categories around best practices. First is from a management administrative standpoint. So the type of things you should be doing that we see are being successful to encourage people to not only use and leverage CrushBank more, but get the most out of it. And then the second piece is for your technical teams, just how they would work with it and how they'll benefit the most from it. So if we just run through the list really quickly, the first one on the list there is the no escalation without using CrushBank. This is something we've seen very successful. I'm going to show you an example why in a minute or so, but this is something we've seen very successful at a bunch of our clients where anytime a ticket needs to be escalated, my recommendation is that you require that handoff communication to have some sort of a component about did a CrushBank search or did not do a CrushBank search. Again, even if there's this, the ticket still needs to be escalated, and even if there's not a ton of value because maybe this is a new client, a new issue, a new system, whatever the case may be, maybe you can't find a lot of good information about it. At least it gets them in the habit of knowing how to exhaust all their resources and do every bit of effort before they pass along to someone else. Look, I've been doing this a long time and I understand how people work. And a lot of times people feel if they can't solve the problem, it's easiest. And honestly, it's often best for the client just to get someone else involved that can. But I don't think in this day and age, that's all that realistic with the strain on resources we all have and the patience, the lack of patience, I should say, a bunch of our customers have, and the frustration involved around support. I think it's real important for your tech teams to make sure they're doing everything they can. And again, one of the ways we do that is encourage people to require a CrushBank component of an escalation handoff email or communication. The second one is what we call it our long ticket review. So basically analyzing tickets that take over 60 minutes. Now, granted, I know there are often tickets that will take over 60 minutes and it's realistic, whether it's setting up some new hardware, setting up a new user, things like that. But what I find as an admin, if you get in the habit of reviewing users' timesheets, and we actually have some utilities that we can even make available if you want to do this a little bit more efficiently. And this is what I'm going to show you in just a minute. But we often find that if you go through and review people's timesheets for tickets that took a long time and kind of recreate that effort from the CrushBank side, it gives you the opportunity to see either, hey, your people are not leveraging the system the right way, or show them evidence of why it's valuable, help them learn how to use the system better, things like that. So I highly recommend doing some sort of a timesheet analysis, looking for tickets that took a long time, doing a brief look at the ticket, seeing if it should or it shouldn't. And by the way, this will teach you something about your desk as well, even outside of CrushBank. You'll start to understand why people take longer on tickets, where they're struggling to find information, what they're like, how they're struggling to communicate with the users. This will open up a world, I think, of opportunities for you. So I highly encourage it. We talk about, and we have talked about synonyms extensively in the past, both in kind of webinars and events like this. We talk about it in the onboarding, but I just want to reemphasize the importance of it. We all come from different companies, different worlds where we use different vernacular to describe the same thing. And I think it's real important to understand that not everyone that you bring into the organization is going to speak the same language. So the way we let you leverage this is through the use of synonyms. And basically, if you're not familiar, how that works is we'll use SharePoint as an example. Let's say you have a client that uses SharePoint, but they call it the intranet because they're old school and they used to have some sort of intranet where they kept all their company data and everything got moved to SharePoint, but they don't know that it's SharePoint on the back end. So someone may call in and say, hey, I can't log into the intranet. Well, if you have a tech that has no idea what the intranet is, they're going to waste countless hours. They're going to escalate. They're going to ask a bunch of questions trying to figure out what at Acme Corporation do they mean when they say they can't log into the intranet. If you set that up as a synonym, and you'd have to work with us for that, if you set that up as a synonym, as soon as they type in that they can't log into the intranet, they will get results related to SharePoint. So that's just one example. There's a bunch of them. Things like people that use QuickBooks as 2 words instead of 1. Client abbreviations, you call a company ABC when really their name is Apple Beverage Corp, things like that. So use of synonyms, real important, I think, for the quality of the results. And again, it's something that we help you set up front, which I think makes the system that much more effective. 3 other ones I'll run through real quick. The reverse lookup's pretty obvious. The way I find this the most, personally, I find the most interesting is phone numbers. It's something that people don't often throw into CrushBank. But if you put a phone number in and you do a search, you'll not only find the CRM data associated with that. So hey, this is Jane at Acme Corporation. Or maybe it's the phone number from someone's vacation home that they asked you to call them on 6 months ago, you never documented, and that's the number they called in on. So those reverse lookups for things like phone numbers, license keys, IP addresses can be real powerful. Again, just get in the habit of using a search as your first go-to activity or action. Same thing with Google searches. Some of you may know we have the ability to upload web pages and make them appear as part of your content, your documentation inside of CrushBank. So I would ask people, if they're not using it, ask them how many Google searches they do a day, find out what they're searching for, and encourage them to get those documents loaded into CrushBank. Because again, if one person does a Google search and finds really good information, that's great for them, but that has no value to the rest of your organization. Where if they go and upload that web page rather into CrushBank, now it's valuable for everybody. And the things that Ben just talked about, the no good data, notes when a ticket solved, was this helpful? These all sort of feed the flywheel and help fast track not only the training of the system, but also the use of the system. So the no good data one is probably my favorite function. Ben did a pretty good job of describing it, but the idea behind it is that you do a search, nothing good comes up, you click the button and automatically a ticket is created. And that could be for your documentation team. It could be for the account management team. It could be for the proactive team, however you run your business. Someone is now responsible for understanding why you don't have good data for this result. And quite frankly, maybe there's no good data to be had. Maybe this is a new system. Maybe it's a training issue. It's not always black and white, but at least this sort of uncovers the opportunity for you to see where and why people are failing and finding answers. And then real quick on the from the tech standpoint, I like to think of the search as sort of an expanding circle. So let's say you do a search inside of ConnectWise or ServiceNow or whatever, where you search by ticket and you get a bunch of results. If that result set doesn't have good data in it, the first thing I would do is switch off the suggestions. I'm going to show you this right now as I switch to a live demo. Is you switch off the suggestions so that, and then do an actual query. So essentially you're going from the system building a query for this company to you building a query for this company, because maybe the ticket came in and said, I have an error on my printer, but maybe there's more data you can put in there. Or the next step is to switch from just that company to all, because we all know that we have companies that run a lot of the same systems and platforms. And just because you solved the ticket for a different company, maybe you can leverage that for this new one as well. So like I said, sort of think of it as an expanding circle. Use the resolve query, then do your own query inside that company, and then do your own query inside all companies, and you just get an ever-expanding data set of results. I mentioned the resolve, ask a further question. I'll show you the difference between tile view and list view when I switch to the demo. And keyword search, this is a functionality, and Nick, I'm just going to take control of the screen real quick. The keyword search is a functionality that not everybody understands. Is available. If you put a search in quotation marks, it will do an exact keyword search for that term. So again, if something has to have, for example, Meraki in the results, you would do a search and you put Meraki in quotes, for example. So I'm going to run through the really quick example. Now I'm doing this in the web browser. This could just as easily work inside the pod, inside ConnectWise or ServiceNow or whatever. The reason I'm doing it in the web browser, quite frankly, is just because it's bigger and easier to see. So I'm logged into a demo tenant here, and I'm logged into a demo ConnectWise tenant. So I mentioned the 20 for 60 ticket search. So I'm just looking at one user's timesheets here, and I'm looking down the right-hand side at tickets at how long they took. So I chose this one towards the bottom here, where the user spent almost 3.25 hours unable to log into Skype for Business on Yealink. And if you click on it, you can see the time associated with it. You'll notice there's a couple of different people putting time against it. If you read the notes, you'll see that it was escalated, it was bounced around a little bit, and it was ultimately solved. But I'm going to show you what that looks like inside CrushBank. So the first thing I do here is I click search by ticket. And again, you can do this in the pod, but I chose to do it inside of CrushBank. In the web browser. I do a search, and this is going to bring me back the search results. So again, this was a user that couldn't log into Skype for Business on the Yealink phone. So you'll notice I put the ticket number, it found the company, it did the search. So I could do all that fun stuff. But literally the very first ticket result I click on here says phone. And if you read through it, it is a different ticket with almost the same exact issue. And it talks about step-by-step how the person solved it. Now, this might not be the end all be all. Ultimately, what they had to do here was they had to reinstall the Yealink software on the phone in both cases. But if nothing else, it gives you an example of an issue that someone had, how they solved it in the past, who worked on it, what they did. So basically all the troubleshooting steps. So, we like to say you're kind of starting on second base here. And there are other tickets that may be relevant or useful. You can click on them and you can get all those details. And there's other information about the users involved. Just so happens in this case, as I scroll up, there's not a ton of good configuration information. Here's the phone info, but really what I was looking for was the ticket where this was resolved. So you could see how in this scenario, I'm not saying it would have cut it from 3.5 hours to 15 minutes, but it probably would have cut it down fairly significantly if I had done this the right way. I mentioned list view and tile view. I'm just going to really quickly show you what I mean by that. So by default, the results come up in what we call list view. And what this basically does is it takes all the information and all the document types and it sorts them by confidence level across all the document types. Generally speaking, this gets pretty overloaded with tickets because tickets are often the best result for a ticket. But a lot of times you'll want to see configuration information. So I highly recommend that you work and live in tile view so you can see the different pieces individually. And again, I think it's also important to understand that you can drill into each one of these and scroll down. Oftentimes the result's not going to be on the first page. It will get better the more you use it and the more you click on it and do these things we talked about. But if you, especially as you're getting started, you really need to drill into those and have the patience to kind of look through those results a little bit more rather than assume that it's going to, sort of hit you in the face with the very first result. That was all I had, Nick. I'm going to stop sharing and give you control back. Certainly any questions, any comments, anything anyone has, please let me know. But just kind of a brief overview of what our thoughts around best practices are.